This is Andi for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by Carl Froch here in Texas. Carl, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Not bad at all.
It's good to hear. Obviously out here in Texas, a big fight on Saturday night, Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Billy Joe Saunders. Carl, a lot has gone on over these past few days, just from kind of up until the point of your arrival. What have you made of it, or what have you made of the antics?
I think that obviously Billy Joe Saunders has got a game plan, and part of that game plan will be to wind up Canelo as much as he can, try and get inside his head. You know, if you don't understand boxing, then you wouldn't understand. You'd think if you're going to pick a fight with someone, you don't want them to be angry, you don't want to wind them up. But actually in boxing it works against you when you're infuriated, because you start doing silly things, you start loading up, which slows you down. You make mistakes, which means you get counter-punched. And Billy Joe Saunders, I think, is going to try and box and move and use his slick skills and his fast hands and his feet to get around and outmanoeuvre Canelo. I think that's the only way he can really try and win, because Saunders isn't a massive puncher, so he's got to rely on his boxing ability. And to help him, I think the wind-up tactics have started, and Canelo seems to have bitten a few times.
It's one thing I was going to ask you. Do you think Canelo is frustrated and annoyed by Billy Joe simply because people have raised the point that when Canelo fought Rocky Fielding at the beginning of that fight week, he had to negotiate for his brother's kidnappers to release him, and then obviously he's gone on to knock out Rocky Fielding in the third round, I believe it was. If you can obviously deal with like something like that with what Billy Joe's doing, you would imagine that's nothing in comparison. Yeah,
I wouldn't have thought that Alvarez is really getting that annoyed by the tactics, especially when you consider that, what you just said. I mean, I read that in the pre-fight notes, that he negotiated the release of his brother who had been kidnapped, and for a very large sum of money. And you just think to yourself, what kind of world is he living in? You know, to go through that, his brother's been kidnapped and he's sorted all that out before a fight. It's quite heavy stuff, that is. And when someone's winding you up and taunting you and trying to get inside your head, I can imagine that really it's water off a duck's back for Canelo. But he has shown a few signs of being annoyed, and you know, he's bit a few times and has reacted in a negative way by shouting a few swear words and then reacting by, you know, for the team, for Canelo, for Billy Joe Saunders, the team's wind him up as well, and he's reacted, and he's got a rise out of him, hasn't he, Billy Joe Saunders? So I suppose he's going to be happy with that.
The ring has been settled on at 22 feet, Carl. But I spoke to Eddie yesterday, and Eddie mentioned that in Billy's last two fights, he hasn't boxed in a ring bigger than 18 feet. Just your thoughts on why he was so insistent on getting a 22-foot ring in for this bout, and to have gone through the whole process of coming across as if he wasn't going to fight Canelo unless he did get his way with regards to the ring.
I'm not sure if he really wanted a bigger ring that much. I think he was just being a nuisance. You know, a bigger ring probably suits him better if he's going to be boxing and moving and using the ring. 18 foot, 22 foot, 20 foot in between. I don't think it makes a big difference, to be honest. But if he can get his own way and annoy Canelo in the process, then another box ticked in terms of winding him into a frenzy.
So with regards to the fight itself, Carl, everybody seems to think that if Billy Joe is to be successful, it will be via points. At the same time, if it did go to the scorecards, should he be concerned?
Canelo, should he be?
Billy Joe, that is.
If it goes to points, I don't know. He's mentioned about the dodgy scoring, and we always do question scoring in some fights. We question what the judges were looking at, but should he be concerned about it? If he goes the distance, he should be happy, to be honest, because Canelo's going to try and bang him out, from what I'm hearing. If he does go the distance, I think Billy Joe's got to have a fair crack as anyone, because if he manages to survive the distance, it's because he's boxed and moved and fought well, and he's been slick and used his skills, his fast feet and his fast hands and his head movement and his counter-punching. If he does that and goes the distance, he'll have a chance of winning the fight, you know. I don't know how pretty the fight will be if that happens. But yeah, you always do have to wonder, if it goes the distance, as the away fighter, are you going to get the nod? So he should be concerned a little bit, but what's the alternative to not being concerned about the distance? It's to stand in front of Canelo Alvarez and have a tear-up with him, and you don't want to be doing that, let me tell you.
So how does this fight play out in your own mind, Carl? As we edge ever closer to Saturday night, what are you expecting when the pair of them are looking across each other in the ring?
I'm expecting Billy Joe Saunders to box and move, use his fast hands, his clever footwork, his slick skills, his head movement. Canelo Alvarez has all of that as well, by the way. Very good head movement and good footwork and a good solid jab. But I'm expecting Billy Joe to really try and use his boxing skills to the point where he's going to try and be like Sugar Ray Leonard, at his best. Try and jab and move and put shots together and get off to the side and move around. Don't go back in straight lines. Just manoeuvre around the ring, give himself room, make Canelo miss, and try and pepper him on the outside without getting caught up. I expect that to happen for a period of time before Canelo cuts the ring off and starts to get to him and starts to land shots, body and head, and maybe get to Billy Joe Saunders and potentially put him away. If Billy's that slick and that quick on his feet and manages to manoeuvre himself into positions where he's safe for 12 rounds, fair play to him, and if he keeps out of the way, he could end up nicking this on points. He could. I spoke to Mark Tibbs earlier, and that sounds like that's what the tactics are going to be. If he pulls that off, bloody hell, great, fair play to him. I mean, I want Billy Joe Saunders to win this fight. Why wouldn't I? He's a British fighter. I like him. I think he's great, and he's a bit close to the wire only sometimes with some of his comments and some of the things he does. But he does make me smile. He does, Billy Joe. I hope he pulls it off. And I think the only way he can pull it off is to box and move and keep out of harm's way. But I don't think Canelo is going to allow that to happen.
Carl, as a British fighter on a way, Saul, if Billy Joe was to be successful on Saturday night, where would it rank him in the history of British fighters travelling overseas and picking up a victory?
Mate, it'd be awesome. It'd be up there, wouldn't it? It'd be probably one of the best victories away from home. Canelo Alvarez is the ultimate fighter, like one of the best fighters of all time. Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua aside, who else are we talking about? There's some really, really good fighters at lightweight at the minute, but Alvarez really is the big deal. He's the guy everyone's talking about, and he's the world-renowned name. So if Billy Joe pulled this off, bloody hell, this would be a massive fight and a massive upset in boxing history. It really would.
Is Billy Joe the toughest test for Canelo in between, say, 168 to 160 out of the fighters out there? You've got the likes of Gennady Golovkin, a trilogy bout if that was to happen, Andrade, Charlo. Eubank Jr.'s put his name into the hat. Caleb Plant up at 168. Is Billy Joe the toughest test for him in your opinion?
Well, he's a southpaw, and Canelo, when you watch him against Lara, there was times when he struggled in that one, and he made it awkward for himself, or Lara made it awkward for him. So potentially with that southpaw unknown quantity and that's them slick skills of Billy Joe, this is up there. I expect some more from Callum Smith, to be honest, because I've sparred a lot with Callum Smith, and he can bang a bit. He counter punch left hook, and he throws the uppercut as well, and he can bang. He's super middleweight. He's tall and rangy, and he sits down on his feet when he's in close and lets the shots go. But he didn't seem to really. I don't know. I don't want to say he didn't try, but Canelo didn't seem to get out of second gear. And Callum Smith didn't really seem to bite down his gumshoe and have a proper go. Almost like he was happy to go the 12 rounds of him and just get the fight out of the way. I was a little bit disappointed with both of them, but maybe it was just a clash of styles. But the fact that Canelo really did deal with Callum Smith with so much ease, it does make me question as to whether or not Billy Joe has a chance in this fight. But I'm giving him a chance because of his boxing ability, his fast hands, his natural skills, top amateur. I think he's got a chance at causing an upset, potentially.
Carl, if it was you in the ring on Saturday night, how would you look to go up against Saul Canelo Alvarez?
Well, I don't know if you saw my fight against Arthur Abraham. He was a lot shorter than me. He's about 5'9". And he could punch as well. He hit me once in about 12 rounds, and I felt it. He hit me in the last round, actually. He hit me a couple of cuffing shots around the side and the back of the head early on, and I could tell he could bang. But all I did in that fight was use my reach and height. Height and reach is a massive advantage in a fight. You're stood in front of somebody, and you can hit them with shots, and they can't hit you because they can't reach you. So that's a big advantage. So I'd use my height and reach advantage, and I'd also use my toughness and my punching power late on. So I'd try and box and move and keep out of his way and pepper him with a jab. And people say, hang on a minute, you can't box. But what I'd say to that is I won 2 ABA titles, I won a medal in the World Championships, and look what I did against Arthur Abraham and a few other fighters. Butte, I annihilated him. So I'd box and move, but meet Canelo as he comes at times. Just stand and meet him. I'd be able to stand and have a trade with him and exchange some leather. And I know I can take his punches. I might be wrong, I might get absolutely flattened and ironed out. We'll never know because the fight ain't going to happen. But that's what I do, box and move, take him on at times, have some good exchanges, and then try and get back on my bike. But Canelo's a special fighter, mate, and for me to say that I'd beat him, I'd back myself, but for me to say I'd beat him would be stupid because we'll never know.
Do you miss it?
Oh yeah, I always miss it. I do. I'd never missed it when I first retired. I was enjoying retirement, and now as it goes on, I think super middleweight Canelo Alvarez, big fight at the AT&T here in Dallas. Imagine doing the ring walk. When you're fighting, and you're in that moment, you take it for granted, and you kind of don't want to do it because you're a bit nervous. You want to do it, but you're thinking, oh, what, I've got a big fight tomorrow. I'm really nervous. What if I lose? And these things go through your head. But then when you've retired and you can't fight anymore, and you're not in these big nights, you miss it. And you think to yourself, you know what, one more. And because it's super middleweight, this fight's at 168, I have thought to myself a couple of times, to fight somebody like Canelo Alvarez in Texas, in America, there's 70,000 fans over there. It's not 80 fans, we know, it's not 80,000, but it's 70, it's still a big number. I do think to myself, how fantastic would that be? And yes, to answer your question, I do miss it. But I'm not stupid, mate, I'm 43 years old, and I've got a steel wool head, and I'm too old to fight. Well, I'm not actually. I could probably give him a tear up. But
we're seeing a lot of kind of crossovers coming into boxing now from all walks of life, especially that YouTube market. Would you be interested in if somebody, whether it be a YouTuber or an ex-MMA fighter or whatever, was to call you out and to mix it with yourself in a boxing ring? Would something like that interest you?
It's going to get you some hits now. This is. I've been offered the 8 2-minute round fight with Roy Jones Jr. and that would float. That interests me because Roy Jones is an absolute legend, one of the best fighters of all times in his peak, but he's obviously old like me, past his best like me, and it's 8 2-minute rounds with I think 12-ounce gloves. So something like that I would look at, and I am looking at it. I'm currently kind of looking at the paperwork and looking at the proposal that I've got.
I think I heard you say earlier, Roy Jones is here for the fight, so I take it the pair of you will be having a little word about it as well then.
We might even have a roll around on the cobbles, you never know. we might get it going while we're there. So yeah, I'm broadcasting with Roy Jones tomorrow. I mean, I'm stood with him chatting about the fight. I mean, what a privileged position and what an honour it is to stand with such an amazing fighter and a legend of the sport, a Hall of Famer. But yeah, I don't know, I might mention it to him. I might say, if you had this proposal to fight me over 8 2-minute rounds and see what he says. Because, let's be honest, it's an exhibition type fight. It's 8 2-minute rounds. It's not proper boxing. But if it sells, if it makes money, it makes sense, right?
Carl, I couldn't imagine you though in what they call an exhibition bout, going into a fight with just the intention of just using your jab every other minute or something.
Yeah, me either, to be honest. And I don't think that would happen because at some stage I'm going to start letting shots go. I spoke to Mikel Kessler about it and I said, listen, don't hit me hard, I won't hit you hard. And he went, oh no, but you hit me around the body and the head, and then before you know it, you're having a full-on tear up. But no, we'll see how that goes.
Carl, just moving forward once again, a lot of talk in the heavyweight division, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury. From your understanding, working with Sky, working with Eddie, working with DAZN, where do you think things currently are?
Well, that's the $1 million question at the minute. Or is it the $100 million question? It's a big fight, mate, and there's a lot of money at stake, and there's a massive demand for it. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when and where. Hopefully it'll be Britain. Probably won't be Britain because these site fees in Saudi and Dubai and wherever else, they're so big. They can't not go away. It's a shame for it to not be on British soil. This is an undisputed, unified heavyweight championship of the world between two British fighters. It's never happened. It's a special time, and it would be great if it was in Britain at Wembley Stadium, wouldn't it? But we're not that lucky, are we? You know, we're ruled and governed by money. Everything is. The world revolves around money. So, to answer your question, the fight will happen, but when? I don't know. I spoke to Eddie Hearn this morning, and it's like speaking to a politician. You don't get a straight answer. But I don't blame him because, you know, if it's not done, if he says something that then doesn't materialise, he gets crucified for it. So he has to be careful with what he says. And at the minute, all we're getting is it's not on yet, is it? There's no definites. We need a date and we need a venue, and then we can start getting excited about it. But I will say it will happen because it has to.
Carl, we'll leave it there now. I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. I appreciate your time. I look forward to seeing what happens with Roy Jones Jr. as the week progresses. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
No, pleasure, mate. Anytime.